Good day, folks. It's Tony Fortunato from the technology firm. Today we're going to run through a little bit of Cisco and DHCP basics, or a primer or a primer, and we'll just jump right into it like I always do. So the first thing we're going to talk about is just getting started. And why do you even want to do this? Well, in some cases you might need a temporary DHCP server. Maybe you're doing something like an install where you don't have access to the corporate infrastructure and you need things to get IP addresses, that sort of thing. Maybe sometimes you need a DHCP server for a lab, right? Another good reason. So why build a DHCP server when your Cisco equipment could do the basics for you? So in this presentation, I'll show you how to set up a simple DHCP scope. Doesn't matter if it's a switch or a router, anything relatively current with Cisco, this would work. Even some of their access points can do this as well. And for more information, you can go to Cisco's website and you can actually review this really cool DHCP document. And it talks about commands, config, support, and all that kind of stuff. I'll post this in the article so you don't have to type it out. You just click on a link. So we go to the Cisco configuration slide, and this is where we configure the device. And what we do is simply, well, actually, I'm sorry, this is optional. I shouldn't say this is simple. This is optional. This part of it, I always do. So I exclude an address or a range. And what am I doing? Well, I'm excluding .1 to .100 because I don't want anything to get an address in that range. Things that are important to me, things that I'm going to reserve, things I'm going to statically configure, so I'm blocking out that range, so to speak. From there, we go to IP DHCP pool, and we actually define a name. And in this case, I give it the subnet. That's the name. And I like to do that because it's more symbolic. Tends to mean a little more to me. But you can call it anything you like. From down here, we're going to actually define the network this applies to, and the subnet mask, of course, and the DNS server. In this case, we've got 2 DNS servers separated by a space, and you can have up to 8. So that's good to know. Lastly, we've got a default router, so we can get off our subnet, and the lease, and that is 7. So that is 7 days. If you wanted hours or minutes, you would simply put a space after the 7 for your hours, a space after that for the minutes, or if you never want this to expire, you can type the word infinite. Now that it's configured, you want to make sure it works. So you're going to go to your switch or router, and you're going to type in show IP DHCP bind. There's your bindings. So we see the good old IP address. We see the MAC addresses, the expiry, and then automatic. And then the other option would be static. You would see that, or infinite, you would see that as well. That's another one I just totally came to mind. And the MAC address is important because you'll find out that this little bit here, the 01, isn't really part of the MAC address, and we'll talk about that in just another slide or two. Then if you want to get rid of something from that table, so for example, this 101 guy, we want to give him a static address, so we use this to get the MAC address, so we can just copy and paste it and don't have to worry about typos. And then you want to clear it, so we type clear IP DHCP bind and then the IP address, again that .101 guy, or if you want to wipe it all out, you can just do a star or an asterisk and then they all go away. And then you can go on to the next point, which is reserving the IP address. So from here we do IP space DHCP pool, we give it a name. Again, I use the MAC address because it means more to me. Then we put host space the IP. This is the IP address that you're going to reserve for it. In this case, it's 25.249. Totally different subnet, different address than we've been looking at. And of course, the mask for that. Then we go to the client identifier and we specify the MAC address for that IP. And this is where it's important. If you didn't know that 01 part, because Cisco wants something at the beginning called a media type, and 01 means Ethernet. So we have to make sure this says 01 and then your MAC address. Give it a default router. DNS server, then this is new, option 4, that's the SNTP or your time server, and you can obviously assign options. So if you need to assign an option, then hey, just option number and then whatever that refers to. Just be careful, some of the options are in hex, that sort of thing, so make sure you read that document. Lastly, I give it a client name, and this is very important if you plan to take the DHCP database and export it, that sort of thing, to a real database, or you want to do some reporting later on. The names can come up and you can use that, but you don't have to do that, but I just do that anyways. And lastly, we've given it a lease time. So again, within about a dozen commands, we've basically set up a DHCP scope or a pool. We've learned that show IP DHCP bind to see what's there. With clear, we know that, and then here we know how to reserve an IP address. I think that covers the basics. That gives you more than enough to work with when you get started with it. And if you go through that Cisco document, you'll see there's a bunch more stuff you can do with DHCP as well. So hope that helps. Have a good day. Bye for now.